Every story begins with the blank page, and we try to create the entire story from there. So, Bite Your Own Face by Jay Wilburn. All right, Ward, well, let me spell his name right. Ward Sanders fought with his arthritic fingers to get the protective plastic over the solar panels he had disengaged from the abandoned site. Alright, let me fix a typo here real quick. Everything I can fix at the beginning saves me trouble at the end, I guess. He groaned with pain and exhaustion. Wow, I'm hitting every wrong key today. Alright, pain and exhaustion as the zombies growled from around the corner of the facility. Did I use facility already? No, I said site. That'll work great. Alright. He took a couple breaths to regain some strength. He was not as healthy as he had been 10 years ago in his early 60s when he first started working as a scavenger for the settlement. His knees cracked. This should probably be a new paragraph, but I'm going to keep it the same one. His knees cracked as he bent and lifted with his legs. Solar cells were easy to crack. No, I've already said crack. Easy to shatter. And he didn't want this stop to be for nothing. They were too big to go in straight to the back of the enclosed golf cart he was driving. As the zombies rounded the corner and closed in on him, Ward took an extra few seconds to get the corner of the panels inside the covering. They would probably be fine, but one undead a-hole bumping into the cart at the wrong time or the wrong angle could break, could ruin everything. Ward hated sloppy work before and after the zombie apocalypse. He took a few breaths and wiped his forehead with a red handkerchief. He always kept in his pocket. The dead drew close enough for him to smell their filth and endless rot. He stuck, let me do a new paragraph here. He stuck up his middle finger at their milky eyes and snapping teeth. One of the shambling corpses up front of the group peeled back his blue lips from black gums in response, as if he understood the message. Starve, Ward breathed out at the leering monster. He climbed behind the wheel, popped the brake, and started accelerating slowly to avoid burning off power. They got close, but not quite close enough to touch. They kept pace for a few seconds before falling slowly behind. Ward watched in the mirror for a moment, but then turned his attention ahead, always ahead. Alright, say he hadn't survived and thrived out here by being reckless. Alright, let's do a scene break. I'll get those all centered later. Alright, got a few details written down here. Ward slipped through the dark halls of the warehouse / factory complex as he found himself on another broad floor between machinery and storage shelves. It didn't seem like an efficient or safe setup to him, but it wasn't his industry, and all these people were dead now. He clicked on his small flashlight just long enough to map out the walkways ahead and to spot check the bigger words on his shopping list. The flashlight was back. Flashlight turned off again, and he waited for his eyes to adjust. Something shuffled into his path, dragging. Okay, I got two hisses here. Hold on a second. Let me save himself some edits later. Something shuffled in his path, dragging 1 foot more than the other. He didn't need to see clearly to understand clearly what he was dealing with. Ward slipped into a space between one of the larger machine casings and the roller belt beside it. He flattened himself from view as much as possible. Right. The undead hunched thing in the rags of rotting coveralls shuffled past. Ward held his breath, but eventually needed to release a little CO2 from his nostrils. The dead man kept trucking. All right. Then his stomach rumbled. That rumble was probably deeper down. Ward, raccoon was greasy meat and didn't settle well with him. But you had to eat something for breakfast. Alright. The zombie turned on the noise and blocked the small passage where Ward hid. He reached to fumble out a knife. He probably should have already been holding, but the dead man was on him. Ward shouldered the zombie sideways, and the back of its head punctured on a lever from one of the controls. It wasn't deep enough, so the creature kept clawing at him. Ward used most of the cuss words he knew as he slapped the hands away and slipped out into the walkway again. The dead man reached for Ward and broke off the lever in the back of its head. It stumbled toward him and had hands on Ward again. He fought to keep his feet. So the monster would not end up on top of him. Ward shoved backward and felt something twist painfully in his lower back. The zombie bounced. Alright, let me spell zombie correctly. That's the least I could do. The zombie bounced off the machine casing with a ping from the metal lever sticking in the back of its head. Ward showed his own aging teeth. He advanced on the zombie this time. Hold on, I need to give him something to work with here. Let's say Ward's hand fell onto a clipboard hanging on a waist high hook beside him. Alright, now I got him something to work with. Ward showed his aging teeth. He advanced on the zombie this time, lifting the clipboard into its face and chewing teeth. Alright, I need to have something happen up here too. The dead man reached for Ward. Alright. Had hands on Ward again. He fought to keep his feet and the monster not end up on top of him. The cold teeth snapped together an inch from Ward's nose. There we go. Now he's got something to be mad about. Alright, Ward showed his own aging teeth. He advanced on the zombie this time, lifting the clipboard into its face and chewing teeth. He shoved the head back square into the machine and then pushed hard against the flat of the clipboard. Something gave with a wet squishing sound, and the zombie slid backward a few more inches. The dead man's knees buckled and he folded to the floor. It appeared the lever in the back of its head had finally gone in deep enough to destroy the brain. Ward dropped the clipboard without looking. He clicked on his flashlight to check the list again, turned it back off, and continued through the building. More shuffling greeted other side of the floor. More light spilled in from high, dirty windows. So he took several steps backward to find shadows. Once the trio of zombies passed, he moved on into the next twist of hallways. Alright, so we've established a good bit of his process here. Now we'll get to what he's looking for. Twist of hallways. Alright. So here we go. He ran the tight circle of his flashlight beam over the containers on the shelves. He referenced the sheet. Let's say shopping list. He referenced the shopping list again, and he referenced the shopping list again and matched the letters and numbers. Ward squinted at the instructions and read aloud. It's a pyridine synthetic. Hold on, I'm copying some things down here that I took notes on. It's a pyridine synthetic, highly flammable. Of course it is. He gathered all the containers he could into the backpack over his shoulder. He traveled deeper through the building. On another set of shelves, he debated a set of bottles that did not have exactly the same numbers as the notes on his list. Was it close enough? He wasn't sure. He read through the instructions again, mumbling to himself. Serves as an alvamopan supporter. Again, I'm trying to get some babble in here. I don't even know if I'm using the words right, but that's okay. Serves as an alveomopan supporter. Say blah, blah, blah. At least this one doesn't explode, but is it? There you are. He took down the correct bottles and filled up the pack, really testing that new twist in his lower back. Something growled deeper down the hall. Another something answered from the other direction, and a huge metal crash followed. That got both sides worked up, and Ward heard them approaching from both directions. He cursed under his breath as he weaved sideways between the shelves. Catching light, he changed directions and found an emergency exit door. As long as he wasn't trapped in a fence or up high, this was the ticket. Ward hit the crash bar and smarted as it didn't give. He pushed a little harder, hearing it start to groan. He held his breath and slammed into it, popping the door loose and open. The growls turned in his direction, as he knew they would. Ward Sanders limped along the exterior brick wall to the north. He heard them before he saw them. dozens of zombies spread across the fields and into the trees in the distance. One by one, they turned and they followed as they caught sight of the old man still living and still moving. He reached the street and walked right behind a large undead woman without pause. She turned too late and sniffed the air for him. Okay, I want to be right there. Ward dropped the pack on the golf cart seat and popped the brake before she turned to find him. She came close to grabbing the edge of his cover before he got the cart moving along at any speed at all. Ward nodded as he set the pack carefully on the storage floor. One of these things was flammable. He did not know how volatile. No need to test such a thing. Ward noted with a smile that if he had the solar panels sticking out, she would have gotten a piece of them. He slept that night on a raised balcony of a fancy restaurant that strung white Christmas lights up for decoration. He never liked those kind of places. Their burgers were always too small and too expensive. As he took out a dried piece of raccoon meat for dinner, he decided he'd kill for one of those stupid sliders. Alright. The next day, an endless line of undead men, women, and children. Hold on, let me fix one thing over here. The next day, an endless line of undead men, women, and children herded past his golf cart below. His wake from all his scavenging had finally caught up with him. They passed under his balcony and right by his cart without turning their heads. They probably didn't even remember what they were following, but he had to wait for them to move on before he could. His back was a tight knot of hateful ache. No position on the hard balcony was comfortable, and standing up to stretch would have him trapped here for the rest of his life. Okay, there's one thing I wanted to add up here at the top. I meant to put in at the beginning. Okay, he had a couple breaths to regain his strength. He was not as healthy as he had been 10 years ago in his early 60s when he first started working as a scavenger for the settlement. He was suffering from... Okay, let me fix one thing. Sorry. He was suffering from congestive heart failure. Even back then, and it wasn't getting better with age. Okay. Now I'll need to make that a new paragraph. There we go. Alright, so I wanted to suggest at the beginning that he's out here even though he's in his 70s and he has congestive heart failure. Okay. His back was a tight knot of hateful ache. No position on the hard balcony was comfortable, and standing up to stretch would have him trapped here for the rest of his life. I can relate to that. I know how it's like to be uncomfortable. Okay. He tried to pass the time with a crime novel he had picked up. It wasn't great, and it was missing pages. other times he turned the crank to recharge the extra batteries he had brought up with him. In the end, he decided his hands hurt too much, so he just lay there staring at the sky. Alright. At least the solar panels on top of his cart had an extra day to charge. Ward worried he was going to have an extra day, have another day to wait, as the zombies kept coming through the night and into the next morning. But as the sun rose, they tapered off, and by the time he finished the last of his raccoon, they were gone. He loaded up and took a long constitutional with no more undead trouble makers. Ward took some different roads home to avoid running into the back of that herd. Fortunately, alright, let's spell that correctly, why don't we? We're just picking random letters there to spell that. Fortunately, they broke up and shifted mostly southward, so he didn't lead them back to the fences of the settlement. He pulled up to the gates alone and with little charge left in his batteries. They let him through and started unloading for him. He leaned against the side and waited for the debriefing. Pardon me, sorry about that. Hope I didn't hurt anybody's ears. All right. Okay. It was Russell Adams. Alright, let me spell this name right while I'm here. It was Russell Adams who came up the path with his, say from the path from the closest buildings with a clipboard. Ward smiled as he recalled the board he'd used to dispatch a troublesome zombie in the dark of a factory. He also liked Russell. Alright, I need this to be a new paragraph, I think. He also liked Russell. The guy was young, but didn't give Ward much trouble. What'd you bring us, Ward? What'd you bring us, Ward? Okay. Ward handed off the list with check marks and numbers written beside. If I learn to pronounce any of these things, I'd tell you. Russell uncrumpled the list and started taking notes. A couple guys hauled out the solar panels, and Russell stopped writing. Hey, thanks for dropping in. Appreciate both of you being here. I don't know if I missed you sending me messages earlier, but I just saw them. A couple guys hauled out the solar panels and Russell stopped writing. Those weren't on the list. On the list, Ward. Ward shrugged, and it hurt his back. Well, I can take them back, but the zombies weren't into clean energy. Russell smiled and shook his head. I hear you. I just don't want you to waste time or possibly hurt yourself. We can make our own solar panels now, and better than these. We'll take them. But you don't need to risk yourself for them anymore. I remember when your uncle would have kissed me on the mouth for bringing those in. Russell nodded. Sure, but times and needs have changed. All right. Ward stretched and stepped away from the cart. He saw men on horses in the distance, leading cattle back into their pens. Ward remembered nearly getting trampled, bringing in the first livestock to the compound. Oh, we call this a settlement. To the settlements years ago. All right. I used to bring in canned goods and bottles of medicine too, Ward said. Now we grow everything, and you have me bringing in unpronounceable. Oh my goodness, I spelled that right on the first try. All right. Now we grow everything, and you have me bringing in unpronounceable chemicals to make the meds in-house. Russell finished the inventory and said, soon we'll be making those chemicals ourselves too. What will you need an old scavenger like me for then? Russell said, you might have to learn new skills. Ward rolled his eyes. God forbid. Were you bitten or scratched? Russell asked with no emotion. Nope. Russell made a note. Were you in close contact with any of the dead? Yep. Russell eyed him and said, every time, bored. Ward shrugged and had to hold his lower back. What can I say? The world is full of them. I killed one with a clipboard. Remind me to tell you about it. We'll have plenty of time. Come on for extended quarantine. Ward sat across the suite from the caging where his ex-wife continued to nag him. He kept his back to her and continued to hit refresh on the computer. Everyone will be there. She was saying, you can take a break from all this for your great grandchild's baptism. Another one of the grandkids is pregnant too. If I miss this one, I'll catch the next one. Martin, Carrie, Stephen, everyone will be there. You can't possibly be this stubborn. I'm in quarantine, Aaron. You're always in quarantine. I think you're avoiding us. You divorced me and married Frank before the zombies came. I've been trying to avoid you the entire apocalypse. She continued a while longer, and Ward kept hitting refresh. Finally, she gave up, but he didn't. There were only 3 days left. And then he'd be out. Finally, an open spot popped up, and Ward clicked to reserve it. Before it vanished. He didn't even bother to read it until the job was reserved. When he did read the details, he leaned in and chewed at his tongue. Finally, he turned off the computer as he said, "Well, that's interesting." He popped some popcorn and found a movie to watch. Ward had a bigger cart this time with a combination fuel and electric engine. They also made him take a motorbike too. Fancy, Ward said as he checked over the bike a second time. Here came Russell with his clipboard. You need help with that? Ward rolled the bike into the back section of the vehicle himself and started tying it down. I still know a thing or two about this job. You didn't have to take it. I know there is a family thing this weekend. Ward didn't look up. Ward didn't look up. All right. Maybe the family benefits from all the ration credits I earn doing this job. Russell shook his head. We don't use credits or ration anymore. We're back to paper money and banks. You know what I mean. All right. I know your family all work and are doing fine for themselves. If you want to skip one mission, Ward met Russell's eyes. I like you, Russell, because you don't usually give me shit. You usually just tell me what needs doing and you let me go. Well, I started to care about you along the way. Just think a little rest wouldn't kill you. Sure, but then some younger, healthier kid would have to go out there in my place. If he was bit, people would miss him. People will miss you too. And that missing is not far around the corner. Whether it comes with teeth or with a bad ticker. Either way, I'm on my way out, one way or the other. Okay, hold on. Me doing this helped build what we have now. Sure, Ward. I'd never say otherwise. No one would. Just think you should enjoy what you built out of quarantine every once in a while. Ward sniffed as he climbed around to the driver's seat. The fences have gotten bigger and bigger every year, Russell. But in the end, we're still in a cage. I go out there and do whatever the hell I want, any way I want. Then I come here, go to my nice quiet cage with everything I need. I'm not sure I'm missing anything except the shopping list. Russell sighed and handed over the single sheet. Not much to it. Well, at least this I can pronounce and remember. It's recon. Remember? You're only bringing back the info and then bigger. Okay, sorry. You're only bringing back the info and then bigger trucks go out for the collection. I'm sure you'll sign up for that the minute those slots open too. Ward shrugged as he popped the brake. I hate missing out on the fun. Open the gate or I'm ramming my way through. The electric engine hummed forward, and the gates had plenty of time to open and close for him. Ward stuck out a hand for a single crisp wave behind him. Russell wasn't sure the old man was looking, but waved back anyway. All right. Scene break. The wheels of the motorcycle. The wheels of the motorcycle slid on the dirty tile, and Ward's knee put another hole through the wall as he bounced off it. He could tell he was going to pay for that if he was still alive tonight. He twisted the accelerator and wobbled up the hallway as the zombies fell in a pile behind him. He bounced. Let's see. Ward rode low on the bike, staring out from under the bright white helmet. Oh. He felt like a regular evil Knievel. I'll need to check the spelling on that, but that's alright. Will the computer know what Knievel is spelled? Well, I'll be getting smarter every day. Alright, the computer, not me. He felt like a regular evil Knievel. Ward bounced out onto the street and heaved the gold bars one by one into the back of his motorized cart with heavy impacts. All right. The dead jostled one another, pacing up the hallway to the door where Ward was parked. He took his time unloading, waiting for them to catch up. As they exited the building and swarmed toward him, Ward gunned the bike and nearly flipped over. That would have been a hell of a way to go. He got control and raced to the corner. There, he revved the bike and waited for them to all exit and find him. More dead came out of other buildings around him. Of course they did, he said. Ward waited until the last possible moment and then raced up a side street with a wave of zombies behind him. He only waited briefly this time to be sure they were still coming, and then he made the full circle back to the front. By his cart, he power slid and roared back inside. An arm reached out from the stairs and nearly took his head off. Ward screamed and ducked as the arm just grazed the top of his head. Figures. Hold on. Let's make this a separate thing. Figures. He grumbled. He still made the turns and found himself back at the open vault that stunk of exhaust. Ward loaded more gold bars into the basket behind the bike. As he heard the growls, he made his way through the building again. He may have overdone it this time. The bike was quite sluggish. Ward had to kick a zombie on one side and then on the other as he made a sliding turn. The next one squared right in front of him, but there were more behind, so he drove into it. It got hands on him and even tore his jacket before it folded under the front wheel, and Ward drove over its face. To its credit, the zombie popped right back up with the black mark down the center of its face and kept coming. 3 gold bars fell out of the basket onto the tile. The bike moved a little faster. Okay, I can take a hint. If I survive this run, I'll head back. He blasted out of the door into the arms of a dozen or more of them. For a moment, they had him halted, and Ward prepared to feel teeth. He turned the accelerator and raised smoke off the back wheel as he twisted in place. Hands started to fall away, and the zombies bumped each other. Suddenly, he was free and careening toward the side of his cart. Ward tried to break, but just started sliding. He popped up the front wheel and drove right into the back cargo section through the narrow opening like it was what he planned all along. He also nearly drove out the other side, but the engine died on him, and he barely got off the bike before it fell. Alright, hold on. Before it fell onto the cluttered pile of gold bars. Ward clambered. Oops. Gotta spell it the American way. No extra U's here. Alright. Ward clambered into the driver's seat and floored the cart. Floored the cart, unlike his usual cool self. It barely moved as the dead closed in from all sides. It started rolling, but Ward could have walked faster. The gold was too heavy. He switched over to the fuel-based motor. It choked and chugged and threatened to poop out on him like the bike. Everything finally caught, and he got a little torque. As the cart edged along, hands scraped and squeaked along the sides. The whole cab shook with the force of them clawing to get to him. He pulled away from the mob, and despite burning fuel, he was still barely gaining space between him and them. No sooner had he lost sight of them than the warning light for low fuel lit up. He switched back to electric and kept moving with momentum, but soon the batteries were low too. Ward looked for a port in this golden storm. He turned into a auto garage and teased the cargo door down. As he waited for the dead to descend on him, something growled behind him. He set eyes on a scrawny but tall zombie who staggered toward him from a back room. There were plenty of tools, but they were on the other side of this hungry corpse. Ward sighed and took out one of the heavy gold bars. As he waited, the zombie fell into an open pit, say open repair pit, and bashed his own head open. Okay. That was the end of that problem. Ward hugged the heavy gold bar to his chest as the other problem flowed by outside. The herd continued for hours, but never figured out he was in the building. As silence and darkness fell, Ward considered his options. It was far, but he could hike back and let them come for his cart later. They might also take this opportunity to make him a nice retirement watch out of one of these bars. Then what? Ward's voice echoed in the garage. Spend time with my family. He shivered. Ward started investigating the equipment around the garage. He slept fitfully, but got up early and got started. Okay. Scene break and final scene. Here we go. This turned out to be a whopper of a story. I'm closing in on 4,000 words. All right. Russell Adams approached the eastern gate of the settlement. After the guard alerted him, there were plenty of guns if this turned out to be a hostile vehicle. It had been a while. My computer sounds like it's about to take off. It must be thinking very hard. It had been a while since they had met strangers. As the Range Rover pulled up to the gate, it turned slightly, and Russell saw it was towing one of the golf carts. He narrowed his eyes. The window powered down, and Ward leaned out wearing sunglasses. "Did you miss me?" Russell rolled his eyes. Open the gate. After he parked inside, Ward leaned against the quarter panel. It needs some work, but it runs. Ran into trouble. Ward made a chop with his hand and said, drove right smack into trouble. There's don't know if you heard, but there's zombies out there. That's so, Ward? Sure enough, bunches of them. Did you... Ward held up a hand. I was in close contact with the dead. Hold on. I'll take my regular room with a view. One of the other men called. We're going to need some carts for all this gold. Russell tilted his head at Ward. You were just supposed to find it and tell us where it was. Ward reached into the Range Rover and pulled out a map he had drawn on a paper floor mat from some auto garage. He pointed at the map and then pointed at the gold in the back of the cart. I found it. Russell stared at the map as Ward Sanders marched toward the quarantine building. you coming to tuck me in, Russell? Or do you want me to lock myself up this time?